Hello, everybody. Welcome to Culture Codes, the podcast. I'm Felicitas Olszewski, unpacking cultural influence at the intersection of brand, product, and innovation every week. You can find us on culturecodes.substack.com. On today's episode, we are excited to welcome Karen Raghavan, a global leader in the beauty and wellness space and currently the global president of Allies of Skin. Karen brings a combination of strategic vision, commercial expertise, and cultural insight built over more than 2 decades leading some of the world's most iconic beauty and lifestyle brands. From her early days in investment banking at Goldman Sachs to senior leadership roles at Estée Lauder, Benefit Cosmetics, and Biosense, Karen has built a career at the intersection of business growth, creative brand storytelling, and international expansion. Now, at Allies of Skin, she's guiding the brand's next chapter of global growth with a focus on innovation, efficacy, and cultural resonance in the fast-evolving beauty landscape. In this conversation today, we'll explore Karen's career journey, her philosophy on building cultural relevant brands, and what it takes to lead with impact in today's global beauty industry. Karen, welcome to Culture Codes. Great to have you.
Felicitas. Thank you.
Karen, could you start by introducing yourself a little bit to our audience and walking us through your career journey to date, from your early days in finance to leading some of the world's most iconic beauty brands, and now to your role as global president of Allies of Skin?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Karen Raghavan, currently the global president for Allies of Skin. I'm actually coming up on my 1-year anniversary of joining the brand, but my career didn't always start out in beauty. I have to say that it was quite organic in terms of all of the twists and turns that I've experienced in my career. So I did start out in investment banking, which was sort of the route that a lot of my college graduate classmates all embarked on right after school. Went out to Hong Kong, spent a year in high-tech banking, came back to New York, and just realized that I despised investment banking, and it was soul-sucking, I have to admit. And I have friends who are still in that industry now, but I couldn't last. So kudos to them. I moved out and really was seeking what really drove my passion. So I joined Coach in their international department and then in their finance department right after they went public. Realized that finance still wasn't really the place that I felt most at home, and slowly made my way to the merchandising department at Coach, and then followed a VP of finance over to Estee Lauder. So my jump to beauty was purely because I was following an incredible boss of mine. As I entered the beauty industry at Estee Lauder, that was it. I was hooked. Now I worked at Estee for a few years in the global travel retail division, looking after brands like MAC, Bobbi Brown, and Stila, when Stila was even a part of the Estee Lauder companies. Then moved out to San Francisco for graduate school, and in the middle of my group program, joined Bare Essentials as director of international, coinciding with when Shiseido announced their big landmark acquisition of Bare Essentials. Stayed there for a quick and fast and furious year and was recruited away to LVMH, which owns Benefit Cosmetics based in San Francisco. And there started an 8-year run at LVMH, and it was incredible. So I was head of international for 2 years, to Singapore for 4 years to run the Southeast Asia and India regions, and then back to San Francisco again for my last 2 years, running a big China awareness project. After LVMH, I took some risks, dabbled in ed tech, biotech, but always made my way back to beauty. And at the start of COVID, started advising startup founders and CEOs on any part of their business that needed help, whether it was fractional sales, whether it was strategy. I was really able to now dive deep into helping a lot of beauty founders and CEOs start up their business or build their organizations, and it was quite rewarding. And that led me to Allies of Skin last year. I'm really thrilled to be just rounding out my 1 year here at Allies of Skin and excited to talk more about it.
So am I. It's really impressive and so exciting. I can totally resonate after years working on sports and tech companies in the last years. I dived into the beauty, wellness, well-being, and personal care space, and I'm obsessed ever since with all of the brands, with what's going on. So I can resonate with your shift. Nevertheless, are there any key learnings or takeouts that you have from your time in finance that you've carried further into the beauty world?
Yes. I mean, I will joke about how, finance or investment banking was soul-sucking for me, but it definitely laid a very solid foundation, right? So So I've been able to look at businesses from a profitability and loss standpoint very early on. Really had that awareness of revenues all the way down to whether you're making money or losing money, whether it's by customer, by channel, by business unit, right? So when you're leading international businesses or departments, P&L is actually really, really important because most of it is business development. So you may not be making a lot of money as you're launching internationally or trying to expand internationally. And it's really critical that you understand all of the levers and hedging that you might need to do in order to protect your bottom line. So I do have to give a lot of credit to how I fatefully stumbled into a few years of finance at the very start, which then coincidentally and very nicely laid a really good foundation for me.
Right. That makes perfect sense. And I'm curious, as part of your global footprints, you have not only led teams here in the US, but really worked globally, with teams in Asia, in Europe, in all of North America. How has working across different cultures, time zones, geos really shaped the way you approach leadership and brand building?
A lot actually has really fed into how I am as a leader today. I would say, for one, it's a deep level of understanding compassion. That's where I would start. I think not having any sort of preconceived notions or assumptions is easy to say, not easy to do, but is something that I've definitely learned and continue to take with me wherever I go. It's also that importance of relationship and human relationships. So really connecting with your teams and your colleagues on a personal level when you can to understand what makes them tick, right? What motivates them? What's important to them culturally? What are their societal norms that may not be the same as our societal norms here in the US or how I'm used to it, right? And so what I'm hoping that my international business, how we say, experiences have really given me is that compassion, that deep level of understanding and forgiveness too, right? Or also not an instinct to jump to conclusions, right? People communicate in so many different ways. We here in the US expect everybody to be speaking English as fluently as we do. But when you're working with international teams, English is most likely their second or third fourth language. You never know. So never taking anything at face value. And again, that sort of human to human touch, that contact is key because once you get somebody on the phone or meet them in person, you realize that maybe something that you've assumed about them over emails, right, or memos may or may not be actually true or accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love what you're saying, not only bringing compassion and challenging potential blind spots and biases, but also truly understanding who your global consumer is as you operate, on brands that want to scale globally and internationally. When talking about driving international growth, what would you say are some of those key ingredients to scaling a beauty business successfully?
I would say, looking at having global standards but local sensitivities. I think a lot of brands who are originating from the US say, okay, well, we'll just copycat or copy paste, what we're doing in the US and we'll just like copy paste that in market A and market B and market C, right? And for those of us who've done a lot of international work in our career, we know that that's not so easy and in many cases not so relevant. And so I'll give you the example, at Benefit Cosmetics, massive global organization, a really healthy mix of business across North America, Europe, UK, as well as Asia. Is the sense that, yes, we set some global guidelines and frameworks and positioning for the brands, but there needs to be that sort of understanding that, the local teams do really know how to interpret or take whatever the global standards are and then make the local business or the local version of that brand a reality, right? And I think there's a lot of collaboration that is key and critical to that. So really, again, that mutual understanding needs to be achieved in the sense like, okay, here's what global wants, but at the local level, this is actually what's working, or this is what consumers are asking for. This is how we resonate with our local consumers here. So I would say that sort of sensibility and that sort of perspective has really helped me, right? Like understanding that we, yes, have an idea of how we want to be, but also giving local team and also really being attuned to that local consumer is some of the keys to success.
And I guess not only in terms of communication and marketing, but really formulations, key ingredients, skin concerns, which differ across, many geographies. Yeah, absolutely. That's very insightful. Thank you. I think beauty is one of the most innovative industries. Just having moved out here to the West Coast last year, there's really an innovation hotbed for new brands popping out of nowhere. And I was curious, the beauty consumer is very hungry for new innovations. I'm personally, really following social beauty trends a lot. And you just see that there is somewhat of a pressure on brands, to come out with the next innovation or position themselves really innovatively. What does it really take to stay sharp, relevant, and ahead of the curve in this consumer environment?
That's a really good question. It's a very hard question. So I think where Allies of Skin is really succeeding is that our founder, Nicholas Travis, and I repeat this many times when I'm introducing the brand, he's really the brains behind the formulations and the innovation. And I think having a founder like him is one of the biggest reasons why, we're really hitting it right with consumers right now. One is, he's never been one to be looking at quote unquote trends per se or following like, competitors A is doing this, we should keep tabs on that and we should try to do something similar. Or our retail partners telling us that these brands are doing really well with this type of product. Why haven't we offered, something like that ourselves? And where, Nicholas, how Nicholas formulates and how Allies of Skin really differentiates is we don't look left to right often, right? We're always looking ahead and really thinking about what that consumer need is, speaking to a lot of consumers, speaking to a lot of honestly influencers because they themselves are product enthusiasts, beauty enthusiasts. They themselves are doing a lot of research on ingredients and brands and products, and staying close to what people's pain points are, what their challenges are, right, is really critical to how we innovate. So the stuff that is in our pipeline and soon to come in the next 12, 24, 36 months is really looking ahead at what those skin concerns are going to be based on lifestyle trends that we're
Yeah.
seeing now.
That makes sense. When talking about Allies of Skin, what was the original thought behind the brand and its products, and who is the consumer it's created for in the first place?
Well, I think the brand was really created for our founder, right? So our founder, Travis, I always say the brand was born out of his life journey and his trauma. So he was really looking to heal himself from some of the physical trauma that he's experienced. For those of you who don't know his founder story, I really encourage you to hit up our Instagram page where we've pinned it, and it's a nice lengthy segment, but it definitely is very engaging because he speaks very vulnerably about what led him to start Allies of Skin. But yeah, so that's what really led to the formation of the brand. And what continues to drive it is what exactly would be products that he would be looking for his own skin to feel and look the way he is, right? So again, he encountered a lot of physical trauma. So there was a lot of healing he needed to do from a physical standpoint. So his innovation is always looking for the best cutting edge ingredients that are going to deliver fast, efficacious results, and our promises are transparent and they're realistic. So that's something that he as a founder has really developed with our end consumer, is that sort of trust and transparency, right? We did all of the research, made sure that this product is going to deliver these results, and we're going to promise you that you're going to see them. And so there's we leave a lot of that marketing fluff out, and he's a walking poster board for it, right? So he uses
Yeah.
all products, he formulates a lot of these products for himself. We just did a founders drop recently. It was our very first founders drop. He really says he created that product for himself. It has 56 ingredients in it, and it's our founder's essence. But that is sort of the culture of innovation within our brand. When you look at him and you look at the skin that he has after suffering through a lot of the trauma that he did, it's a great proof point, let's just say, for our consumers as well.
Absolutely. I'll make sure to link the Instagram page in the show notes so everybody can read up and hear from his own voice on how his journey has brought Allies of Skin to life. I love that, rooted in a real purpose and insight, something that was created out of a personal experience, but then, is resonating with so many. And what I love about the brand is it's absolutely thoughtful. It has an aspect of transparency and honesty. And I think when you talk about places of trust, I've experienced the brand online, of course, but also at some of my facial care institutions of trust. And so I think, syncing from a distribution point, really with that consumer in the places where they're seeking that expert advice is really, really smart. And I think speaks to one of your, marketing approaches from a distribution perspective. It's a little bit about trends and how the brand is not necessarily following skincare or beauty trends, but evolving lifestyle trends. Can you speak a little bit to that? Are you looking to, for example, sustainability, climate, how we will live in the future, what will, concern us? Speaking a little bit to that, I'm curious about your take on it.
Yeah. So authentically, Nicholas, as a founder, is really all about inner and outer healing and wellness. So we'll start there. And when it comes to lifestyle trends, you realize there is this whole trend of wellness now, right? Everybody positively is looking at how they're eating, how they're sleeping, biohacking. Longevity is a buzzword that's really floating around a lot now. What does that mean? Is it like longevity in terms of lifespan? Is it skin longevity? But those are the types of topics that are really at the forefront of discussions these days. And it's all for good. It's really, really great. And so when we look at some of those quote unquote trends, people looking at extending the lifespan of their skin, right? We're all going to age, but maybe there's preventative measures to help us age a little bit slower, more gracefully, however you want to verbalize it. But everybody is trying to biohack in a way so that we can live our healthiest for longer, right? That is the ultimate goal, I think, for everybody who is really much on this sort of wellness or longevity bandwagon. Look at our products. That's exactly what we aim to do. So how do we enhance, right, the condition of the skin? How do we make you dewier, glowier? How do we minimize those appearance of fine lines and wrinkles? How do we help firm? It's no secret, and I'm glad that these topics are being normalized now, but people are on GLP-1, for example.
Yeah.
Right. And it's doing great things for a lot of people's lifestyles. But the side effects could be that your skin might sag a little bit. You might lose some of that firmness that you had before. And so how do our products hopefully help you address some of that? We are all living longer. And maybe when our parents were in their 40s and moms were in, 40s and 50s, and they were going through perimenopause and menopause, I don't think that they were as healthy as we are now in general. And so we're probably a healthier 40 than our moms were in their 40s. And so, how do we have products that really address menopausal skin? And so that's what we mean by innovating, not according to trend in ingredients or like, if everybody's going for hyaluronic acid, we're not going to be going for hyaluronic acid. We're going to come out
Yeah.
with that need to address hydration, but in our own way.
Yeah.
And so that's how we innovate against what quote unquote trends are happening now.
Yeah, I think you're looking at white spaces, which I really like, right? Because I would argue that in general, when it comes to women's health factors such as peri or menopause, and then new factors such as GLP-1s, which is a fairly recent development, that is an innovative take on a health concern or a wellness aspect that people start to care about, and where we will see, breakthrough innovations from a skincare perspective, such as Allies of Skin, which is really, really exciting. Can you speak a little bit about reaching your consumer, a little bit about your marketing mix, what you sort of like see resonate and what you think is important, and maybe a little bit whether you are tapping into generative AI to help you solve some of those marketing needs for you? I'm curious how you're looking at marketing all the goodness that is Allies of Skin.
So I would say what we've discovered is the word of mouth advocacy angle is really building awareness for us. And we're going to amplify that in the near future, especially 2026. I think that Nicholas, given his story, given his platform, has also been a tool for us to engage people, for them to enter our brand, not necessarily with a product sell in their face, but through authenticity, through being able to relate to his own personal journey. He speaks a lot about not just physical trauma, but mental, emotional healing as well, and trauma as well. And I think a lot of people who listen to his story, even if they cannot relate directly, perhaps based on some of the very specific experiences that he speaks to, but can really empathize, can really sympathize, and really understand that, he's still healing today, right? It's a continuous process. And I think he's been very vulnerable about his founding story and about his origin story. And we continue to try to and maintain that authenticity in no matter what we do. And that includes how we engage with influencers, how we engage with celebrities, everything and every relationship that we may have with advocates of ours, it must be authentic. And Nicholas as founder drives a lot of those, right? It's a lot of it is he's driving a lot of those touch points. And we will try to maintain that for as long as we can. Obviously, once the brand gets a lot bigger, it might be another story at that point in time. But for now, he's really pivotal to engaging with our consumers directly, whether it's on social media, whether it's through intimate events, whether it's through dinners, retail activations. That's how we really are building that community and that engagement with our community.
Right. And that's really interesting. And again, I love it. It touches a little bit on my next question around authenticity, which I think you already answered. But I'm particularly interested in an aspect within, consumers is one. Creators, you mentioned earlier, you tap creators and influencers, for sort of like their advice and insights. I love that you're being really creative forward in that sense, involving them early on. I think the best brands these days, they do that versus seeing creators as an amplifier. Can you talk a little bit about what that relationship building looks like, what it entails, and the role they play for Allies of Skin?
Yes, well, it starts authentically with Nick building a lot of those relationships himself. It's a really strong marketing team and agency partners that we have and that we work very closely with in order to make those introductions, make those connections, nurture those relationships, because Nicholas is just one person. He can't necessarily answer every single message. But what he does do is make those initial contacts and builds those relationships to start, right? He's also very personable. He's very human, right? He gets to know a lot of these influencers and celebrities one on one. And that matters a lot to people. I think he's very intentional. He's also very compassionate. He understands where they're coming from, what their personal stories may be, and really connects with our community that way. So I think it's a lot of work for a founder, I would have to say, but I think that has led to, again, that success in authenticity, that when people are seeing some of our advocates talk about us online, they can really feel the sense that it is real, right? It's not just, okay, we
Absolutely.
paid them some sort of contract and they must talk about us. And so that I think we'll try to keep that going for as long as we can. And then to kind of go back to your point about, generative AI, look, everybody's talking about AI. We as an organization are looking to see how we leverage it, where, when, and how we leverage it. It's not just automatic. It's so buzzy. Everybody would like to say that, yes, we're so using AI, we're leveraging it right away. But I have to say, at a company our size with what we're trying to do, it's extra resources to figure out, studying it, testing it, using it. So it's actually not as simple as what people say, but what we are starting to learn how to do is how it can help us with iterative tasks, repetitive tasks, how it can help us do things simply, right? Like summarize meetings. Previously, you would have perhaps the most junior person on your team have to take copious notes, then spend an hour writing up an email, right? Recapping everything that happened during that meeting or follow-ups. And now we don't need a source anymore. And then from the creative standpoint, what we actually have discovered is that old school photography is still wins for now. And the type of quality that we want to get out of our campaigns, creative assets, the old school photography is still ahead of AI for now. But we'll see. And maybe if you ask me this in 12 to 18 months, I might have a different
You
answer.
come back and yeah. Tell me about the great things you've implemented. It's exciting. No, I think that makes absolute sense. And it is about focusing on indeed some of the goals you have and then understanding where I can help to amplify those. I'm curious when we're talking about implementing your goals in the business and the brand, what are some of the differences that you can see from having worked at big heritage beauty brands to startups to scale ups? You've seen the whole landscape. When it comes to creativity, risk taking, growing a business and a brand, what are some of the key differences and maybe commonalities?
I would say in the big businesses, it's like moving a big cruise ship, right? So, it does take time. There's so much internal alignment that needs to be done, but you also have more resources, right? So there are differences between working in those big corporates versus in a small startup. At a startup, you have less bureaucracy, you have less red tape, you have less layers to align through, and you have that nimbleness, and the reaction time is a lot quicker, right? You may be aligned with three people on your team, and boom, a new initiative can be launched the next day. Whereas in a massive organization, that might take 3 months, right? 5 PowerPoint decks and right.
Yeah.
12 management meetings later, you're getting the go ahead to finally
Yes.
kick off. Again, in a massive company, you're basically canvassing a huge task force, or you have resources to kind of get behind your initiative. Whereas in a startup, yes, you can launch an initiative tomorrow, but you have, maybe two people, who's going to be responsible for that. So I would say, there are pros and cons to both approaches or to both sets of circumstances. I would say that being in a startup is exciting if you are really, how do you say, you get your buzz off of that adrenaline that you get when you can start things quickly, test things quickly, see results quickly, and then see things come to fruition quickly. But it's going to be messy, right? It's going to be a lot messier
Yeah.
when you're part of a versus when you're part of a big organization. Things are managed. Again, there's so many levels of approvals and alignment that needs to happen. There's not that much room for major error or even a sequence of errors. At the startup level, it's going to be chaotic, right? You're going to make mistakes. It's going to be messier. And I think one of the biggest perspectives I have after working in international is to quote a phrase from one of my executive coaches, Ian, perfection is the enemy of good. If it's good enough, launch it, see what you get, improve on it, launch it again, keep iterating on it. But if you're trying to strive for that perfection from the very start, right, you may end up, not even be able to kick off that initiative, or maybe it'll take you 2-3 times the amount of time in order to kick off that initiative. So my preference, obviously, given the fact that I'm at Allies and I've been in the startup world for about the last 5 years and no plans to move back to a massive corporate anytime soon, is I definitely get my adrenaline off of sort of the more quick paced, but potentially a little bit more chaotic environment.
I love that. Yeah, no, I can see how that allows you to bring your passion and your knowledge with an immediacy to the business, and you can have a really big impact, which is exciting. Just like the brand itself, right? Allies of Skin, I think, has a reputation for being innovative, also having a focus on efficacy. And what are some of your priorities as the global president to steering the brand into its next phase of growth?
I think as we grow, we never want to lose sight of why people come to our brand in the first place. So if it's the authenticity of our founder's story, it's the vulnerability, it's his desire to stay connected with his community and to be very involved in the brand. That's something that we're gonna stick with as we scale. We're also going to maintain our high standards for efficacy, for trust and transparency, because as especially with skincare, if you lose the trust of your customers, it's very hard to kind of claw it back. So we have to be very careful about how we formulate the types of results and benefits that we are promising our consumers. We shouldn't overpromise. We should be very honest about, what it can or cannot deliver. And I think we've done a really good job about being very honest about that with our consumers so far. Look, at the end of the day, our skincare, as innovative as we claim it to be, we're not miracle workers either. And we're also really cognizant that people are not going to only use Allies of Skin. I mean, we would love it. And many customers love the routines that our founder prescribes. That's one of the most sought after item is a routine from Nick. But at the end of the day, we understand people are shopping across many different brands, right? Many different markets, many different channels. And so all we can hope is that once they've entered the brand, they fall in love and, they stay with us and discover our new innovations as we launch it. So those are the kind of key pillars that we will definitely stand on as we expand distribution, as we scale our own direct to consumer channels, as we acquire the customers or the number of customers that we target to acquire year over year. I think that we cannot ever lose essence of what made Allies who we are in the first place.
Absolutely. I'm intrigued now. I will definitely look up his prescribed routine, but is there a star sort of like, is there a star breakout product that you have in the range? One that really put Allies of Skin on the map?
Yes, that would be our growth factor serum. So this is a great story because when you ask me how we innovate or how Nicholas, our founder, innovates more specifically, and whether we look at trends, etc. This is a classic example of what we do or don't do. So growth factors just started to hit the map on social media and started to just garner more buzz and more awareness, I would say within late 2024, 2025. And we launched this product in 2023. Nicholas started innovating on this product probably as early as 2018. So if you were to ask anybody in 2018, what do you think about a product with growth factors? If you were to look at any data, if you were to look at NPD or Mintel or do consumer surveys, right, to validate your product innovation concept, you probably would have dropped the idea thinking like, okay, would never get any traction. Nobody has any idea what this ingredient is. Nobody cares. But that's where we are a bit special. And so Nicholas was like, nope, this is sort of the future. This really helped heal my skin. This is how I think it will help other people heal their skin. And so this is a product that we, launched well before quote unquote growth factors became a buzzy thing. And now there are many, many brands who offer a product. So that by far though is our breakout product. It really hit, I would say, late 2024, really this year, 2025. And it's mostly for our brand. It's specific to when we got our first round of institutional funding. So why did it
Right.
not break out in 2023? Well, also because in 2023 we had not gotten funded yet. And we got our first round of funding in 2024. So that gave us the resources to now finally push our hero product. And that really gained momentum in 2025. And so it will continue to be our star product for the near future. Customers are speaking, and it's completely based on the feedback, right? So customers are saying, this is the product we love. We see the results that you're claiming, and they come back for it time and time again. So, from a retention standpoint, it's our star product. From an acquisition standpoint, it's our star product. So we really do have an incredible hero in our hands.
Amazing. And people see that it works and they keep coming back. I love that. Thank you so much for detailing out a little bit of the story behind Allies of Skin, talking about the world, how you innovate, what's in store next for the brand, and talking to us a little bit about your experiences working in big companies, startups, and the differences. For anyone working in the industry, beauty, wellness, skincare, what advice would you give to someone who is looking to build an international global career that balances some of these things that you talked to us about? Creativity, having real cultural impact, but also being able to grow something and having a real impact. I'm curious what you would give as advice to someone who's aspiring to a career like yourself.
I would say be open. I can't say that I sat there at the age of 22 and decided to map out my career for the next 20 years. As I mentioned early on when we started this podcast, my entry into the beauty industry was completely by chance. But I think I was just, again, I think the authenticity and knowing yourself and trusting yourself is something that I would definitely advise anybody. I trusted my boss. I loved working with him, and hence I moved with him to the beauty industry. And then I fell in love with the beauty industry. And so I wasn't going to put myself in a position in a company anywhere where I didn't feel like I was going to wake up every single day and just practically skip to work. And, I mean, look, don't get me wrong. There, when you in the humdrum of your daily job, right, there's going to be good days and there's going to be some bad days, right? But at the end of the day, I've always just followed where my passions are. I can't leave beauty. I've tried to be open and try to risks and try to walk away. But my journey always led me back to beauty, and that's what happened to me. But it could have been that if I got to biotech and it really stuck, I might have just continued on. I spent a year in ed tech and might have continued to stick, and I would have continued on. But what it did show me, though, was that those two industries were not for me. So I think it definitely gives me much more of a sense of intention that if I am going to be in the beauty industry, it's because I absolutely want to be here, right? It's not because it's going to
Right.
lead
Yeah.
me to that next promotion. It's not because I'm working for so and so person that has a big name or a company that has a big name. I really try to just organically, and for good and for bad, if you look at my background, a lot of people have asked me, how did you get to why did you, take these twists and turns? And it was a bit of creativity, being open, taking some risks. LVMH sent me to Singapore, and I used to joke around. I used to joke with my boss at the time. I said, I don't know whether this is a punishment or a promotion.
I love that.
Yeah, most of my colleagues couldn't put Singapore on a map, I don't think, at the time, and to be tasked with, growing a region that I had never lived in before, that I wasn't 100% familiar with, was definitely a huge leap of faith. But I was excited to try something different and to push myself a little bit and to test my limits, let's just say. So I would say, you know, that's growth. That's, being creative, trying things that you would not normally think to try. And not to be so focused on that perfect resume, let's just say, now that I look back. It's easy I know it's hard if, somebody were listening to this and they were 25 years old, there's a lot of angst, right? Am I taking the right job? Am I staying for the right amount of time? And so many questions. And I think in some ways, you just have to listen to your heart, sometimes a little bit more than your mind, to validate whether you're in the right place at the right time.
Absolutely. I love what you're saying there. And also that even a sidestep can bring you new inspiration and a perspective in a different industry or a different environment that in your next job you might need, because having experience in that field can provide you something unique. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really great advice. Thank you, Karen. This has been fantastic. I love to hear about your journey, your story, the story of Allies of Skin, and we will be linking all of those great notes and details in the show notes. Everybody, if you like this episode, then please like, share, and subscribe. You can find us on Substack, of course, but also on Spotify and YouTube. And thank you, Karen. I hope to see you soon, and thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thanks so much, Felicitas. Thank you for having me.